Paper and Glam readers, welcome to another installment of Book Club and happy Halloween week. Tonight we are discussing Grace Coddington's memoir, and we are so excited to discuss a kind of fashion, just great, and the life that she lived. So while the live feed takes a minute to catch up, we are going to do something really exciting, which is a total spoiler on next year's 2016 Paper and Glam Book Club reading list. A lot of you have asked when the list is going to come out for 2016. Mark your planners. It will be next weekend, November 8th. The full list will come out. The book chatters have weighed in. They are all really excited about this list. Every book on the list has either been, well, not either been, has been read by one of us, and we absolutely, it's been gotten rave reviews from one of us. So I can guarantee you an extremely exciting book club list. So with that lead in, Tabitha, what book on the 2016 reading list are you most excited to read? And if you don't catch all the details, don't worry. The November 8th, I'm going to make a video going into detail on all of these books. So don't feel like you need to be like madly writing this down. Don't you worry. You'll know what month is what, and you'll know all the details. But for now, we're just doing a little spoiler of what is on the 2016 list. All right, Tabitha, what is your most exciting book on next year's list?
My favorite so far is the January selection of The Japanese Art of Tidying Up. I'm excited about that because I absolutely love organizing the home. Like, I don't like decorating the home, but I love organizing. So I've heard a lot about this book and some of the organizing groups that I'm a part of. Everyone's talking about it and loving it. So I am really looking forward to reading that.
I'm also looking forward to that one, as well as March's pick, which is my pick, which is The Girl on the Train, which I have read and loved, and so excited to see what everybody thinks about that one.
Yeah, side note, the book chatters all got to pick one of the books because they have been with me all year long, and I definitely wanted everyone to have a say. So the book chatters all got at least one on the list. I think Sarah actually got two. So, but she's been in every book chat. She's like the MVP, so it's appropriate that she got two. All right, sorry, Jana, what's your most excited read?
I'm really excited for Night Circus because I've been waiting and waiting, and also A Discovery of Witches because I've wanted to read both, and so now I'll be like forced to. And Gatsby is right in between them, and that's my all-time favorite book, so that's always great. So I just can't pick.
Okay, I think mine is Gone with the Wind because it's one of those books that I've been like, oh, I'm going to read that book, and then I pick it up and I'm like, I'm not going to read this book right now. So I figure having it as one of the books for the book club, I will actually get to reading it and can finally be like, yes, I finally read it. I can cross it off my list.
And sorry, guys, Jana's connection is a little bit spotty. She's in the middle of a storm, so luckily we caught the end of that in your audio. So that's why Jana's picture wasn't up there, but she said Gone with the Wind in case it cut out for you guys. All right, Sarah, what are you most excited about?
So I feel like, I mean, I should be, because I really want to Discovery Witches. I should say that's my favorite, but I've read it. I'm super excited to talk to you guys about it and, yeah, you know, kind of get everybody else's perspective on it. But I'm super excited for Gatsby, which you guys know because I was really sad when it momentarily they bumped off the list. But I'm super excited for Gatsby because I want to read it again, and it's going to force me to read. And so we read on as kind of like a companion book because I've had it on my list, you know, like since it came out because I was like, ooh, I want to be able to unpack this book. But so super excited to reread and then add the companion book to my have read list.
and so you guys know what she's referencing for the companion book. There's a book called So We Read On that a lot of the book chatters and I will be reading along with The Great Gatsby, and it is basically a book on how The Great Gatsby has shaped our modern culture. So a lot of us are really excited about this book, and it is by Maureen Corrigan. All right, so I hope that was a good spoiler for 2016 list, and mark your planner, November 8th, we'll go through it all. All right, we will get into our first question from Grace. So, of course, we start off with the softball, which is, what is your star rating of the book, and what was your experience reading the book? So, Tabitha, I know that this was a bit of a mulligan for you, which is A-okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so my star rating is a 1, and my experience is I didn't finish it. Sorry, I could not get through it. I was really trying to get through it. I wanted to love it, and I wanted to kind of have a similar experience like we did with the von Frostenberg book, but it was just too, like, it just jumped around too much, and I felt like it was like full of names, and if you're not like a fashion person or you're not interested in that, like, I was trying to find something about her life to keep me going so that I could actually complete the book, but it was like pulling teeth for me. So unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it, but I just couldn't endure it. And I usually try to soldier through because I know that we're going to talk about the book, but I just couldn't do it this time, guys. I did not like it. I think it was put together strange. Like, I like a story. I like, content, like you're taking me along and I'm getting involved with the people, and I know the characters even, and this is her life, so clearly there are lots of interesting people that maybe she could have just give me something. I didn't feel like she gave me enough to keep me engaged, so yeah, it didn't work out for me. So it was a 1.
So I will give it 2 stars. I read the hardback copy, and I'm really glad that I did, because the first thing I saw when I opened it up were these amazing illustrations, which I absolutely loved. I loved the drawings in the book that helped me read it faster, because it's a thick book, right? But the illustrations take up a lot of space, which is kind of nice. I read it pretty quickly, just in like 2.5 days. The writing style for me was easy. I didn't have such a hard time muddling through it. The timeline jumping was a little bit off for me. But why I think that the majority of us aren't going to love it is, I read this review on Goodreads, actually, that because Grace Connington isn't really a reader, she's also not really a writer. And so the person that was writing it, I don't know if she didn't like tease out all of the good stories and really dig deeper in parts that we want her to dig deep, which I know we're going to talk about, but I don't know if that's the part that really like kind of set me off from the overall book. It wasn't what I was expecting. I wanted her to talk more about everything personal and not just her career. It read like a really long biography, which was fine. I read it just fine, but definitely not what I was expecting or hoping for, but that's kind of my fault too, because I came in with those expectations.
So I liked it, I think, a little more than some other people. I would put it more like a 3.5-ish. I know the writing's not like fantastic, but I think it helped remind me of why I liked it so much, why I like fashion, and I really like fashion, so I know a lot of these names, and part of what I really like about fashion is the photo shoots in magazines, and so for me, that being her job and what she primarily does, and all the pictures included in the back, and just I think that is what really brought it up. I do think that it was choppy, and sometimes I would think, like, wait, she's already in America. Why is she talking about England again? And so I realized that she was chunking it thematically rather than chronologically, and it's just a little bit different in that sense. I wasn't super a fan of that, but I liked it overall. But I think because it gave me like a nostalgia for fashion, it kind of made me realize that I always liked fashion, but I didn't think I could go in that field, so I didn't follow that direction because it wasn't something like I perceived myself as, but as an adult, I kind of wish that I had maybe pursued that way more. Erica.
I don't know. I would say maybe 2.5, maybe 3. I mean, it wasn't something that I would pick up on my own. And like Tabitha was saying, like the names in it, I don't really know who a lot of these people are. Some of them I do, but others just I was like, okay, so basically I enjoyed it in the sense of like sitting down to a conversation with somebody and like hearing about their life, but it wasn't like a life-changing book for me. But there were definitely parts of it that I found interesting, and I guess overall I would say that I'm glad that I read it because it's kind of a look at something that I haven't really looked at very closely before. Sarah?
I'm gonna have a hard time. My star ratings are always so arbitrary. 3. I mean, I enjoyed some of her stories. They were very interesting. Yeah, I did not. Thanks, Jana, for putting that together for me, the thematic grouping, because I was constantly felt like I had whiplash the whole time. Like, what are we talking? Wait a minute. I thought we were in the U.S. Why are you talking about British Vogue? And I was listening to it, which, so again, because, you know, your mind wanders a little bit, sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, well, I was not, like, did I take a nap? I don't know what we're talking about. And so, and I didn't know who a lot of people were. I don't fault her the name dropping because that's her life, and if I wrote a book about myself, I would be name dropping about just less cool people. So, I don't know. I don't fault her that. I did, you know, I guess recognize some of the names, obviously. But I had no clue. I mean, because, yeah, I like beautiful things, and I love, you know, beautiful fashion photography, but I don't consider myself any kind of fashionista or anything. So my reference for Andre Leon Talley was from watching America's Next Top Model and him being a kook as a judge. I had no clue like what he had to do with the fashion industry other than that. So I learned a few things. But yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable, but it was really hard for me to follow. I was constantly felt like I was lost a little bit.
Yeah, so I would agree with what all of the chatters said. I would definitely say 2.5 stars. When I wrote the 2015 book list, I was very much in a girl power kind of mode when I wrote it, so I wanted to support, you know, the hashtag girl bosses of our current world who had released books. But I think what I failed to factor in is that a lot of them got huge book advances to write their books, and they were really, really rushed. And that definitely, I felt like, was true of Grace's book. One of the reasons I also picked it is because I think, as Tabitha said, I really expected it to be a great compare and contrast from Diane von Furstenberg's life, because they're about the same age. They lived through about, you know, the same kind of time period. So they were born, you know, right after World War II, and then, you know, they're both, I think, about 75, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought that, you know, wow, what a great kind of foil for one another. They both kind of ran in some of the same circles, and they talk about some of the same things that occurred in their life. But Diane's book, and Katrina, I'm totally going to steal your thunder on this because you mentioned this when we were kind of chatting about it before, but you know, you feel like you have a sense of who Diane von Furstenberg is when you finish her book, and I wouldn't say that's true of Grace. I still don't really know much about her, and as an example, you know, she's been married twice or 3 times, kind of for the sake of the conversation. She's had 3 spouses or partners, and her second marriage was literally 1 sentence, and she didn't say anything else about it. And I thought that was interesting, you know, not that she needed to go into laborious detail. I'm sure it was a bit traumatic because I think it only lasted like 6 months, and her second husband ended up leaving her, and I get that, but it was literally like 1 sentence, and that's a pretty big part of her life. She definitely stayed, it just kind of read like a timeline of fashion moments as opposed to kind of being more of her experience of living through that. I mean, she literally is Vogue. Like, her and Anna Wintour created the modern magazine culture that we know today. And yeah, I expected more from Grace. She really, really knows, you know, she's just lived an incredible life. And I think I can't remember if it was Sarah, someone said that, you know, the person who was writing it with her didn't do a good job, like, teasing out the stories. Because no, it was Katrina. Sorry, it was Katrina. You know, she's not a reader and she's not a writer, which is totally fine. But she wrote it, you know, with a team of people that I feel like didn't quite ask her the right questions when they were putting this together. But the illustrations were amazing, and those, more than anything else, gave me a good idea of who Grace was, and I don't know, her perspective on the world. It was really cute and a really, really nice, different touch. So it sounds like in the comments, a lot of, well, Kimmy Craft says it was 3 stars. I have a feeling a lot of us didn't get through it, which I could totally understand. I listened like Sarah. Thank goodness for Audible. All right. The second question is, what did you learn about the evolution of fashion and or history from Grace's life? Because as I mentioned, she lived from the 40s to current day. So she's still alive. So she talked about a lot of events, you know, like World War II, and then things that happened in fashion. So I'm a history nerd, and I'd love to know what you guys learned from the book, just about the way things were, the way things came to be. Tabitha, did you learn anything new about history?
I'm so sorry. I wish that I had. But because, like I said, how far did I get? I think I only got up to as part of when she was in her marriage. She had just married the guy with the restaurant. That's about as far as I got. So some of the history, I do remember her mentioning something about an outfit and having really short, the short skirt that it was so short that they then created little shorts to go underneath. And that's why I think that some of those things, like, that would have been interesting for me, because I do enjoy history. Like, just having more content, more story, less names. Like, you know, talk about, you know, how you felt as a woman wearing some of these things, or what the creative process was like to, you know, come up with some of these different looks and ideas for the magazines. Because the interesting thing is that even though I'm not into fashion, I love art. I like history. I like people who are creative. So I was expecting some more. I don't know. I was just expecting some more meat. Like, I like photography, but I just think that maybe just a little more. Like you said, just connection with a person, connection with their passion, because clearly she's passionate about what she's done. She's been doing it forever, but I felt like I couldn't feel any of that from the book, or the way that it was. I think it was more the way, number one, how I read it. I read it on my iPad. I think if I had listened to it, maybe I would have been able to complete it. But even if I had the hardback version with all the pictures, I would have loved that. The pictures for the iPad, they were not, you know, so great. So that's kind of like why it was like, man, I was expecting to have a better experience with it, but yeah, that's all I can think of.
I learned probably more than I thought I was going to. I try to follow fashion when I can, and I'm a photographer, so I'm interested in all of the high fashion photography and things that happen. So I didn't know. So about her life, you know, I didn't know she was in a car accident, had a miscarriage. I didn't know that she had been married and that now has a partner. And I didn't know, like, I didn't even know who he was, but I know who he is, just not with her, if that makes sense. And so it was interesting for me to see all those dots kind of connect. And then I went back and rewatched the September issue after, especially reading the preface where she talks about how much she didn't want to be in it, and she tried to curse all the time so they wouldn't film her. And so that preface to the book almost gave me more insight to her and kind of explained the tone of the rest of the book to me, even though it wasn't what I would have liked. Like how Lisa Marie was saying, that I wish I would know her. Like, I got done with the book and I don't know her, but I kind of know her philosophy on life and on fashion. You know, she's very old-fashioned. She loves everything romantic and luxurious, but not like hard and boxy, if that makes sense. So that part was interesting for me, and then watching the evolution of how the shoots were done was really interesting, going from, everything is on film and bringing, all the lighting and all of that to photoshopping every little thing. And in the September issue, like, they want to Photoshop one of the cameraman's stomachs out, and she's like, no, you can't do that. That's the part of real life that we can't lose. So it was really interesting, really getting the backstory of the people that are behind Vogue and how it drives all the fashion trends for everything that we wear and choose in our daily life. And that part of it is really interesting to me. I really liked learning more about that part of it.
I think one of the things that I learned, I didn't realize that she was so integral in the Calvin Klein ads that became how fashion and advertising. I didn't realize that she was, that was before she worked for him primarily, and he would bring her over, and I just thought that was really interesting because, those ads are so iconic, and especially from, like, when I was young, like, that's, that's what I remember, and so, I remember being in junior high and those Calvin Klein ads, and, like, everyone wanted CK1, and it's just that's like totally. I think that's why I liked it, was those little things like, oh, that's where that came from, and I think that, like, other things, like, I didn't realize that models had to do their own makeup, like when she started modeling and stuff, and how then, like, until, like, Vidal Sassoon, cut her hair, and then stylists started kind of sometimes being, but that was offset styling, and then you would come and, like, do it yourself, but then they slowly kind of came in, and just little things like that I didn't know, and I thought were really interesting, and just to watch, like, the evolution of that, and now it's, like, not even the stylist, it's, like, his or her, like, ginormous team who brings in all of these things, and just how, because of her experience doing that as a model, that's how she ended up where she is, styling all of these shoots and setting the tone for, several generations of fashion.
Yeah, I agree with Jana. That was one of the things that I found the most interesting was talking about how, when she was a model, she had this bag that she had to take to all of the shoots, and she would do her own hair and makeup and styling, and then talking about how when they would go on location to shoot, they would take their time and get to know the place and wait until the light was right to capture the tone that they wanted for the pictures. And now today it's like, get in there, get it done, you can fix what you need to on Photoshop later. So I just found that to be interesting, just how much it's changed. And then just about history in general, the stories that she told about growing up in the hotel during World War II, I thought that stuff was really interesting. Just, the blackout curtains and how they came and kind of destroyed the hotel, and they paid them the reparations based on the they basically had to repair everything themselves. I just thought that was to get that perspective, because, I don't know that I've read any stories about people living in hotels at that time that, they ended up using for, like, the base of their operations during the war. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of gonna piggyback with everybody else. The models doing, I guess, beyond just the hair and makeup, the fact that the models were essentially styling the shoots when she started out, like, that was fascinating to me as well. That, because that just seems like such a
Uh-oh, did we lose Sarah?
with the clothes and everything else. So I guess that was kind of eye-opening to me. And I also liked that she staked her claim on that she was the originator of Twiggy's look, which I thought was very interesting. That, she said she was doing the heavy lower lashes look and that kind of doe-eyed look, before Twiggy was even born, which I thought was really cool. I guess, I had no idea, because I guess it's like you see other pictures of not Twiggy and you think, oh, they're trying to be Twiggy. But, you know, because I went back and looked at some pictures of Grace Coddington when she was modeling, and had she not said that, if I ran across those photos, I would have just thought she was kind of a, you know, a Twiggy wannabe. So I thought that was interesting, I guess, something I learned. Lisa Marie?
Yeah, I definitely want to piggyback on what Erica and Katrina said. She in a lot of ways is the one of just photography and stylized photos. She was the one who, and still today, really informs the way pictures are taken. And as someone who styles things, you know, professionally for Paper and Glam, that I really wanted to know more about that. And she did talk about it some, but I guess I really enjoyed those moments where she talked about, you know, like Erica said, getting locations and lighting just right. And yeah, that was a big learning curve. I actually made notes of the other things I learned. So I had no idea that Grace Coddington was married to Mr. Chow. I had no idea. I always thought Mr. Chow was a restaurant in Westwood here in LA next to my favorite cookie shop, which is Dee Dee Reese. But I had no idea he was, and I assumed he was a real person, but I had no idea he was married to Grace Coddington, or that he was kind of the original purveyor, I guess, or restaurateur of like upscale Chinese restaurants. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing I learned is I had no idea Karl Lagerfeld started at Chloe. I know, you know, he's the Chanel creative director and has been as long as I can remember. And I had no idea he got his start at Chloe. Also, I had no idea that Vivienne Westwood was punk. Now I think of her as so just this luxurious brand with this incredible flagship store here in West Hollywood, but I had no idea that she was a punk designer when she started out. I had no idea that Anna Wintour was the editor-in-chief of Home and Garden magazine, and that's how HGTV and HG came to be. She renamed Home and Garden HG, and which is really kind of a defining moment for Home and Garden, right? It was at that moment that they got their own network and kind of came into their own as a magazine. And it's so interesting to hear about how, you know, Anna Wintour gave British Vogue a perspective and American Vogue a perspective, and you know, HGTV, or excuse me, HG the magazine a perspective, and it kind of gives it. Right now, for example, Jason Wu just took the reins of Hugo Boss, and I was just reading about how he is giving the women's line of Hugo Boss a perspective where it didn't have it before. So those kind of things was really interesting to me, and just hearing how the way that they shaped just modern culture. One of the things I think I learned in the September issue, which is the documentary on Vogue, which is how Grace Coddington got her book deal, I think it said in there that Anna Wintour was the first person to use celebrities instead of models in a magazine, and she was the one who kind of changed that perspective and revived Vogue and kind of got it to the commercial place that it is, because I think it was like she doubled or tripled sales by using celebrities as opposed to models. So those are the things that I learned. All right, the next question is Sarah's question, and it's a really good question. I wish I had thought of it myself. And it's compare and contrast Grace's take on life at Vogue versus what's portrayed in The Devil Wears Prada and the September issue. So to set the stage, The Devil Wears Prada was written by Lauren Weisberger, who was Anna Wintour's assistant at Vogue. Anna Wintour's had many assistants, and Lauren Weisberger's was one of them. And so she wrote the iconic Devil Wears Prada, and Grace Coddington says it's the bane of Anna Wintour's existence. And we kind of got some of Grace's perspective, and then we also get a lot more perspective from the documentary The September Issue, which is one of the instances on Netflix, and kind of gives us the real kind of the Vogue answer to The Devil Wears Prada. So I love that question. And Tabitha, I know that you feel free to take a pass on this one. I know this was not your favorite book. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see or read the September issue or The Devil Wears Prada.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the pass, but I do want to say that I still definitely want to see the September issue. I think that that's something that I would enjoy seeing. I've seen The Devil Wears Prada and that's, hilarious to me. So I would definitely like to just, see the two of them, because I never heard, unfortunately, I never heard of Grace until, her book was on the list. So I'm interested in people, and so that's why I think that even though I wasn't able to get through the book, I'm still interested in her life. So I do have plans to watch that on Netflix. So I'm excited about that.
I haven't read The Devil Wears Prada, but I've seen it a million times. It's one of my favorite, like, oh, it's on TV, I'm going to watch it kinds of movies. But I never really connected it to, I mean, you kind of get the connection, well, obviously, between the main characters and then Anna Wintour just sitting behind her glasses, like, grimacing if she doesn't like something or whatever. But I mean, it's a fictionalized version of it to some extent, and I liked Vogue's answer in the September issue a lot because it really shows, like, these are people doing their jobs, and it's not just, a highfalutin kind of a thing. This is their job. They're paid to do it. They love to do it, or they wouldn't be doing it. So I kind of go with them on being kind of like how they were slighted, kind of feeling like this employee that worked there then goes off and writes a book. Like, that's got to feel pretty crappy. So, but I love all three. Like, I think that Grace must be a really funny, amazing person to be around, and I loved how she came across in the September issue, and I think that they all came across very human with real personalities, but yet I love the sensationalized, like, Devil Wears Prada version too, but just not in a real world sense.
Well, I've also seen Devil Wears Prada like a ton of times. I haven't read the book either, because I almost just feel like, oh, I like the movie so much that I just don't, I don't know. It's just one of those, I saw the movie first, and so I'm good. And I've seen the September issues, not in a long time, but I remember the first time we watched it, my husband was like, oh, she's supposed to be her. Like, he immediately connected Anna Wintour to it, because I think insofar as like how she wants to have final say on everything and things like that, which, even though Grace Coddington says like that movie's the bane of her existence, that book is, some of those things are true. Like, she wants final say, just like, the editor in Devil Wears Prada, and she kind of does like want to have like a fair amount of control. I think the difference is in the film and the book Devil Wears Prada, I'm going to assume in the book, they are seen as kind of like arrogant and uppity, and like, if you're not wearing the right thing, we're not even going to like talk to you or look at you as you're when you're in this office. And I think that the September issues and this book show that like Grace Coddington says toward the end of the book, that she hasn't worn makeup in years, she doesn't use face cream, like, that they're really just like down to earth, like normal people. They're not like so stuck up that it's ridiculous. They're there to do business, so they're like all business, but they're not trying to say they're better than other people, which is what I think Devil Wears Prada kind of gives the perspective of. And so I think it's more like the kind of character attack that is offensive in it.
Yeah. I read Devil Wears Prada a long time ago, so I don't remember the details of it. And I saw the movie like when it first came out, but I don't think I've watched it since then. I maybe caught parts of it on TV and stuff, but I don't think I've watched the whole thing in a long time either. But the thing that, if I'm remembering correctly, in that story, the editor is kind of heartless, even with her family, and maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Maybe she wasn't, but it seems like, even her kids, she was kind of like, oh, well, I'll do this, but it's because I have to. And I think, if somebody wrote a story about me and it was like hyper characterized, which usually is going to exaggerate all of your faults, I'm sure I would take it personally, even if it was fictionalized. So I can understand that, but I would think that, like watching September issue, you can tell that she has a really good relationship with her daughter, and I would think that just being portrayed as kind of cold and heartless in all areas of your life would hurt more than being seen as that professionally, because I think, I don't know, I think that she probably does come across as kind of cold professionally, but I think that's what she needs to be, because she has to make the decisions and she has the final say. She's the one who has to answer for stuff. So I don't know. I can see why they would take offense to it, but I can also see the other side of she was writing what she knew and fictionalizing it, and maybe she could have, I don't know, pulled her punches a little bit, but maybe she felt that that would, I don't know, sacrifice her artistic integrity if she did that. I don't know. But I like the September issue. In my mind, Anna Wintour is not the character Meryl Streep played. That's their complete.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. Yeah, I guess so. I watched the September issue night before last, and I mean, I've seen Devil Wears Prada 100 times. I read the book. The book did make me dislike the movie because there are some discrepancies, which I'm really black and white about that stuff. Like, I get mad kind of irrationally so when they change any details of a book I like between the movie. I mean, I watched the movie first, then I read the book, and then I watched the movie again, and I was really mad. But now I've forgotten the book, and so I do know that there were some discrepancies, I think, in the end, and I don't know, some of the storyline stuff. But, I mean, so I was watching September issue, and with the lens of Grace saying in the beginning of the book about Devil Wears Prada being super offensive, and then I watched the September issue before I was to the point in the book where Grace was talking about Anna Wintour. And first of all, I didn't know that the Devil Wears Prada was about anybody real, either when I read the book or when I've watched the movie the first 100 times. But I did, as I was watching it, I was thinking, I don't think that this is inaccurate. I mean, in maybe the intentions behind people, because yes, like, I don't think that Anna Wintour is the devil by any means, and she didn't seem like a hateful person. But I mean, her body, she's a very reserved person, and I noticed she didn't really seem to acknowledge people when they spoke to her. She might look at somebody when they first started talking, but then she would turn back away and stare ahead while somebody is, sitting next to her talking. And I thought, like, oh, that's some, kind of some frigid body language. She's not inviting. There were a couple of times where she was, friendlier. And I mean, so I could see some parallels. But then we got to the point in the book, or I got to the point in the book where Grace was talking about Anna, and it kind of all clicked, like her characterization of her in the 70s as like hiding behind her hair. And you kind of saw some of that body language in September issue. And so then it just kind of, it made me realize, like, oh, I think, maybe she's just really misunderstood and is kind of like a, a reserved, introverted person. And so she is, probably just doesn't, and Grace said that, doesn't let people in the same way. And I did notice a couple of times that, her being kind of flirtatious with men. There was at that breakfast, was it the CEO of Neiman Marcus or something, and she kept, like she was touching his arm, and very, that was probably the most friendly body language she expressed the entire time. So I just thought it was very interesting. But, at the same token, if it had been entirely accurate with The Devil Wears Prada, I mean, Grace would not be there because she is so headstrong and battles Anna. I mean, and I loved that. I loved their dynamic. And then, and it seemed really hostile in September issue, but then, the things that Grace said about Anna, like, you can really tell that that she really respects her, and that there's, a deep mutual respect, which, again, like, profoundly changed my perspective, because when I turned off the September issue, I was like, no, I don't think The Devil Wears Prada is, a poor characterization of her. I think it's pretty dead on. But then the way Grace spoke about her definitely reframed what I saw in my initial impression.
Yeah, I would agree with exactly what you guys said. I have a first edition of The Devil Wears Prada. That's how much I love that book. It's one of my all-time favorites. I do think the book is even better than the movie. You do get a sense in the movie, especially, that, Anna Wintour has been editorialized, right? I mean, it's entertainment. Books and movies are meant to sell copies, so of course they've dramatized certain aspects. But yeah, I agree with Sarah. I never got the impression that it was inaccurate. When you watch the September issue, it actually makes you see how accurate the portrayal really is. And what I thought was really interesting in Grace's book, you can tell that you never really know where you stand with Anna, because Grace is like her right hand, and Grace talked about how every month or so Anna sets up a lunch, and Grace always thinks she's going to be let go. And then so one time she finally asks Anna and says, I was worried. I thought you were going to tell me, it's time to step down. And Anna says, as long as you're here, as long as I have a job here, you'll have a job here. And, I just thought that was such a incredible endorsement from Anna. But Grace didn't even know, how she felt about her. So yeah, I would agree with everything that you guys said. And if you haven't read The Devil Wears Prada, I highly recommend you read it. It's really good. And same with the September issue. It was a great, great movie. I think I watched it over Christmas with my mom, and my mom loved it too. Has anyone read The Devil Returns, the sequel to The Devil Wears Prada? I bought it when it came out, and I haven't gotten to it yet because I've been wanting to reread The Devil Wears Prada first. Okay, I'll take that as a no from the book chatters. And if anyone's read it who's joining live or who's watching the replay, don't let me know if you've read The Devil Returns, and let me know if you liked it. Oh, one scene that I absolutely loved, and this is kind of a good segue into the next question, which is your favorite quote, scene, or character, is I loved how they said Anna Wintour wore all Prada to the Devil Wears Prada premiere. I thought that was hilarious and a really good way to have handled the situation. Because if someone made a movie about me, and it's a movie, so it's going to be a super dramatized version of reality, if it's even based in reality, I'd be so nervous. But I love how she just kind of rocked Prada, and she's like, well, let's see what you got here. I thought that was awesome. Tabitha, did you, in what you got through, did you have a favorite quote, scene, or character?
No.
That's okay. Katrina?
I didn't really have a favorite quote or scene that I can think of. I just really loved her personal illustrations throughout, and I didn't know that that's how she takes notes in fashion shows, is she draws the portions of the garments that she enjoys the most instead of relying on a photograph or like just writing down a description. So I think that part for me was the most memorable takeaway, was just her really illustrating everything that she went through. I mean, the scenes that stuck out most to me are the ones that I wish that she would have gone into more, like the loss of her friend and her miscarriage and car accident. That what does that feel like as a model, to have to go through all these plastic surgeries to redo your eye? And then, she really, later in life, she goes to wearing pretty much black, straight sheath dresses and no makeup. So that's really interesting. I would have wanted to see a little bit more about that. But she was my favorite character, just because I think as a person she's very complex, and I wish we would have seen a little bit more of that. But that's what I'll remember about it the most.
I think when Eileen Ford plucks her eyebrows, I was like, oh my gosh, you'll never be a model. Like, how are they letting you model? And you still don't look right. And then her eyebrows never grew back. Like, how devastating. I don't know. It's why I don't wax or do anything to my eyebrows, because I hear stories like that, and I'm like, I don't know. They're okay how they are. I don't want to mess with them, because I have too many friends who have plucked them or waxed them or done whatever crazy, and so I think that just stood out to me. Like, yes, see, that's why I don't do it. Because I just thought it was hilarious. Because when she talks about not wearing makeup, she's like, except for I have to draw my eyebrows on, and I just thought that was like hilarious. That it's like the only thing that's affected her, like in so small yet so big.
I think the stuff about her family was the stuff that I found most interesting. Obviously, the stuff at the beginning in Wales, but also like the whole thing with her sister, and after she died, adopting her nephew. There's not really a particular scene necessarily, but as far as quotes go, I don't know if this was my favorite. It's just something that stood out to me. I thought it was interesting, and it was actually on the back of the book too. She says, "Is fashion art? I think it's sometimes very creative, but I'm not sure I would call it art. That's pushing it a bit." And I thought that was interesting because, I don't know, that's kind of what I have always enjoyed about fashion, is the creativity of it, which I think makes it an art. So I thought it was interesting that somebody from the inside is saying that it's pushing it to call it art. And I don't know, I just wondered if she had just become so jaded and working around it so much that, you kind of like, oh, well, yeah, whatever, that's great. Or if she just never felt that way. I just thought that was interesting.
So, I mean, yeah, she was hands down my favorite character. I don't know that there was many others. I thought, I guess I don't have a favorite scene. I think the most, I finished listening to the book today, and I caught myself getting a little bit choked up listening to the audio about her friend passing, because again, because the timeline, I never knew when we were talking about, but I'm gonna say that was a few decades ago, but you could actually, I felt like I could hear emotion in her voice in the audio when she was talking about her friend passing, and that was really moving. And I do think, yeah, that was probably one of the better glimpses in her as a person. But I guess I love the fact that she is a 70-year-old woman, and there are people out there that treat Vogue like the Bible. That is, what, like, they base decisions on, what is written and what is produced in the pages of Vogue. And I thought it was very interesting in the end of September issue, or near the end, she went in and looked at the board, and she just kind of shrugged and was basically like, there was only like one spread or one photo shoot in there that wasn't hers, that she hadn't directed. And I just was thinking, like, this is a 70-year-old woman that is driving the fashion industry. I don't think you have to know much about the fashion industry to know that Vogue is kind of like they're the style makers. So I think that's pretty incredible. And she, at the end, she kind of touched on how she's out of touch with the modern world, in that she doesn't check her email, and she had a computer for several years that she didn't turn on, and that's kind of interesting. But the fact that a 70-year-old woman is really kind of driving the fashion industry is absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah, I loved what you said, Erica, that I thought it was so interesting that she said fashion isn't art, because one of my favorite quotes, and you can't see it right now, but I have a Chanel framed quote on my bookshelf, and it says, "Fashion is not something that exists in dresses only. Fashion is in the sky, in the street. Fashion has to do with ideas, the way we live, and what is happening." And that is just a quote that so inspires me, and just as someone who creates content, I absolutely love that perspective on fashion. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting that Grace said that that fashion wasn't art. So great comment. I think one of my favorite quotes, it's on page 327 of the hardback copy, and this really resonated with me. She said, "To me, fashion falls into one of two categories. It can be instantly appealing and you would like to wear it, or it is something you wouldn't necessarily wear, but it is driving fashion forward. And I thought that was awesome because that's how I view fashion. I read Vogue most months and In Style every month, and every time I see a dress, I have one of two reactions, and it's I would love to wear that, like get in my closet, or I don't love it, but I can see how it's significant, and then it almost falls into the art category, which is really more of like a reflection of our time. So I loved that quote. And then the other quote I loved was it's on the very last page, it's 333, and Grace says, "I've grown to realize that life doesn't stand still, and it's not good, and it's no good being sad about it. For me, one of the most important aspects of my work is to give people something to dream about. Just as I used to dream all those years ago as a child, looking at beautiful photographs, I still weave dreams, finding inspiration wherever I can and looking for romance in the real, not the digital world." And I loved that. And that's something that really resonates with me is, when I think about paper glam, I hope that it's about finding significance and sacred in the ordinary, in our own lives as they're actually unfolding. And I just love that Grace, who creates aspirational content as a career, has a similar perspective. So I absolutely love that quote, and the way that she finished the book was really strong. All right, last question, and this is a little bit redundant with number 2, which was what did you learn? And so we won't go in a particular order. Just chime in if you have something to add, and if not, that is okay. And then is what lesson, new idea, or fresh perspective did you take away from your time with this book? And I want to try and start answering this every book chat because I think that I said it before, but when I read a book, it's like, it's like buying a friend. It's like it's meeting a new friend, and I always try and think, like, what from this person's life or this person's story, if it's fictional, can I take away from the book? So we may have already gone into it, but let me know if there's anything else that you learned from it.
I think for me it would just be like keeping things in my closet and in my life that I wear that are kind of inspiring and fun. So not just functional, but like that I will wear and be excited about wearing because it's fashion and you have to clothe yourself every day, so why not enjoy doing so? And this is kind of get into what I understand is the purpose behind our January read. So I'm really excited for that, and just I think how she got me thinking about fashion in a different way, because I watch all the shows, I read all the things, so it's interesting for me, and I want to kind of take it and go a step further and do my version of that in my own life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good one. And I love your pumpkin sweatshirt, Katrina. She's rocking her Halloween sweatshirt, and I absolutely love it. And I have a little pumpkin one on. Yeah, and I love what you said, because I think she said in the book it was Hamish Bowles, I think, who is someone that I think he said that he has this huge collection of clothing, and that he will loan it out for photo shoots, and even he's loaned it out to like the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I thought that was so cool. And I really try not to keep things in my closet for sentimental value if I'm never going to wear them. But there are a few pieces that are like defining moments in my life. There are suits that I keep because it was like a defining moment in my career, or my prom dress where it was a defining moment in my life where I'm like, I feel like the woman that I wanted to be. And that's something that I definitely took away from Diane von Furstenberg's book, and something that Tabitha actually alluded to a minute ago, or at the beginning of the chat, is Diane von Furstenberg talked a lot about the experience of being a woman, and as a designer, the experience she was trying to convey through her clothes. And I love that about the DVF book, and it's something that I really thought about, is clothes that are in my closet that I link to an experience of my own life, and just the experience of being a woman. And as I've gotten older and kind of been more selective about curating my closet, it's like I really want pieces that convey something about my experience of life and my experience of being a woman. And even though sometimes that means probably holding on to things that I may not ever wear, it kind of gave me some, I don't even know, I guess some permission to continue to do that. And I'm not talking a ton of things, but there's probably about 10 things in my closet that I will never get rid of because they're just near and dear to my heart. So I absolutely loved that piece. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think just kind of like the same thing. It just, like I said earlier, it just made me realize like I really have always loved fashion. Like I thought it was something that was maybe more like as an adult or as I came into womanhood, but because I was like a total like punk rock little girl, like, but that was my fashion, and I really did take care of my style then. Like I wanted it to be a certain way, and I would secretly like read Vogue and be, you know, I just thought I could never own those kind of clothes, so I just kind of thought I didn't like fashion, even though I loved to look at it. And I totally am, you know, I have clothes from junior high, and I have clothes from high school, and I have the dress I wore to my dad's funeral and both my grandmother's funerals, and like, you know, like Lisa Marie was saying, like stuff that's like he, you know, purchases. I of course have my wedding dress, which is not like a big poofy dress. It's like a T-length. Like what's super popular right now to wear as a wedding dress, you know, like a 1950s style T-length Audrey Hepburn dress. And I got married like almost 13 years ago, and that, you know, that's the style I had then. And I don't know, I think that just kind of like you said, curating your style, and she really encourages people to know like what their style is. She said she's always been influenced by the 40s, a natural, simple look, and I kind of feel like I know what my style is, and I like to, you know, wear like pretty dresses, of course, because I'm super girly like that, even though I'm not girly in 1,000 other ways. But you know, I've tried to do like trends, like the quote Lisa Marie said, where you're like, oh, I can see how it's moving fashion forward. So like I try, you know, I'll try to grab that piece, and you don't feel it. I think she talked about that like with Azadine Alaya. Like there were some Alaya pieces, and even Calvin Klein, like she would kind of grab them because they were popular right then, and then she realized like it's just not me, and then she would always revert back to her 40s style. And so I think things like that are really, you know, things that I could take away from this book and just kind of keep encouraging my bad habits of liking fashion.
All right, awesome. So I guess that is a wrap for this month's book chat. So a few housekeeping things, of course. So next month, get really excited because we are reading my very favorite author. If I had to pick a favorite author, it is hands down Shauna Nyquist. I think I've talked about her in almost every single chat because she, more than anyone, has, as an author, has informed my worldview and has really informed just my perspective as a content creator, and just the way that I look at life is in so many ways shaped by, of course, the Bible and also Shauna Nyquist's writings. And so I've never read this book. This is her, well, she has a devotional called Savor, which is the 2016 Paper and Glam devotional for those of you who are in our Bible study. But this is her third book, and I have been saving it because she has a fourth coming out next year, which is Perfect Over Present, which will be out next fall. So I've been saving it because I swear I could read her books, like I just read them over and over, and I get something new out of them every time. So I'm so excited to read Bread and Wine. It's all about food and gathering together and just life, celebrating life around the table. And if you've been around Paper and Glam for a quick minute, then you know seasonal living is something that is really just the backbone of Paper and Glam in a lot of ways. So that is why I picked this book for November, which is, November's all about that, right? Gathering together, giving thanks, and saying thank you. And that's what Shauna is all about. So this will be a very, very seasonal, festive read, and I look so forward to discussing it the third week of November. So as a reminder, mark your planner because the next two book chats, November and December, are on the third week of the month because Thanksgiving is the 4th and Christmas is the 4th. So just remember, third week, the next 2 months, and then in January we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming with the 4th Thursday of the month. So I think that is it. Remember to mark your planner for November 8th. That'll be the 26th list. It's a good one, has quite a few favorite books on it, and definitely, it's somebody's favorite book if it's on there. So get excited for that. And thank you guys so much for reading along with me and continuing to light the flame of reading, because it's something that is so important, and it's just been incredible to share that with this community of women. So I will see you next week. Thank you, Book Chatters, or next month. Thank you, Book Chatters, so much for joining us live and putting yourselves out there, and I will see you guys in November.